Tonight, we will discover the story of the ancient world's greatest freedom fighter. Once there were hands bound with chains, a gladiator sword shedding blood in the arena, and the rebellion of a slave who made the Roman Empire tremble. Spartacus, not just a gladiator, but a legendary soul who was the hope of the oppressed, the nightmare of tyrants, and forced to choose between death and freedom. Before we begin, don't forget to support us by liking our content and subscribing to the channel. Also, share your location and current time with us. Sometimes our stories can take you to the dark corridors of ancient gladiator schools. Sometimes we may search for lost calls of freedom in the mountains of Italy. Now let's dim the lights, open the windows for a slight smell of iron, and tonight, let's witness together Spartacus's epic rebellion. In 109 BC, in the mountainous regions of Thrace, a child was born in the tent of a free tribe. Little Spartacus took his first breath in free air. This breath would be the only memory that would inspire him for the rest of his life. His father was most likely one of the Thracian warriors, and his mother was a traditional Thracian woman. At that time, Thracians were free people, living by their own rules on their own land. Thrace was a wild and mountainous region of the Balkans. The tribes living here were known as brave warriors. Thracians learned horse riding, archery, and sword use as children. Little Spartacus also grew up within this tradition. He learned the art of war from his father and knowledge of nature from his mother. The mountains, forests, and rivers of his childhood taught him what freedom meant. He woke up with the sun in the mornings, went wherever he wanted, ran however he liked, was under no one's command. This feeling of freedom penetrated so deeply into Spartacus's soul that no power in life could completely extinguish it. The tradition of storytelling among Thracian tribes was very strong. In the evenings around the fire, elders would tell stories of the heroism of young warriors. Little Spartacus grew up listening to these stories. His favorite stories were those of heroes fighting against tyrants. When he was 10 years old, he saw Roman soldiers for the first time. They had raided a Thracian village and were ordering the people to pay taxes. That day, Spartacus understood what Rome meant. A large, powerful, merciless machine. A system that enslaved free people, seized their lands, and imposed its will on others. This encounter deeply affected him. "Why are they collecting taxes on our land?" he asked his father. His father said, "Because they are strong, my son." The strong are right in this world. But little Spartacus felt this was not right. At 12 years old, he began official warrior training. According to Thracian traditions, boys began learning the art of war at this age. Spartacus was very successful in this training. He was strong, agile, and intelligent. But his most important quality was his determination. Once he set his mind on something, he would never give up. Young Spartacus stood out not only with physical strength, but also with strategic thinking ability. In team battles, he was usually chosen as leader because he was both brave and knew how to protect his comrades. At 18 years old, he became a full Thracian warrior. At this age, he could now participate in tribal wars and clash with enemies. He fought his first battle with a neighboring tribe. In this battle, he showed great courage and earned a respected place among his peers. In his 20s, Roman pressure in Thrace began to increase. The Roman Republic was expanding its borders, seizing new lands. Thracian tribes began to show resistance against this pressure. Spartacus took an active role in this resistance. He waged guerrilla warfare against Roman soldiers. Because he knew the mountains and forests very well, he managed to ambush Roman legions. During this period, Spartacus's name began to be heard among Roman soldiers. But Rome was very powerful. It systematically began to break Thracian resistance. Villages were captured one by one. Leaders were killed or captured. Spartacus also finally understood that the resistance could not be sustained. At 25 years old, he was captured. This capture was probably due to betrayal, because Spartacus was a very careful and intelligent warrior. Roman soldiers took him prisoner by chaining him. At that moment, his free life ended. The transition from captivity to slavery was very traumatic for Spartacus. For a man who had lived freely all his life and never been under anyone's command, this situation was unbearable. But he showed resistance, displayed rebellious behavior. Roman soldiers noticed his strong structure and warrior background. They understood he could not be used as a normal field worker. Upon this, they deemed him suitable for gladiator school. He was sold to the gladiator school in Capua. This school belonged to a Roman citizen named Lentulus Batiatus. Batiatus saw the gladiator business as a profitable trade. Good gladiators made a lot of money. When he arrived at the gladiator school, Spartacus was 30 years old, a mature, experienced, and still very strong man. But now he was a slave. Chains, cages, beatings, humiliation. He had to get used to this new world. The first days were very difficult. Transforming from a free Thracian warrior to a slave gladiator was very painful spiritually. He tried to escape many times, but was caught and punished each time. But slowly he had to accept the situation. To survive, he began to play the game. He participated in gladiator training, improved his weapon use, and learned arena rules. Spartacus's talent as a gladiator was immediately noticed. His warrior background gave him a great advantage. Sword, shield, spear. Whatever weapon was given to him became deadly in his hand. He easily won his first arena fight. The audience liked him. Batiatus was pleased. But for Spartacus, this was just a survival struggle. Every fight was face-to-face with death. Arena fights taught Spartacus many things. Physical strength alone was not enough. Psychological warfare was also necessary. He learned to find the weaknesses of the gladiator opposite him, to influence the crowd, and to develop survival strategies. At the same time, the arena also showed him the structure of Roman society. The rich sitting in the upper rows, the people screaming in the lower rows. This sight showed him how unequal a society Rome was. In months of fighting, Spartacus began to become famous. He was known as the Thracian warrior. Audiences came to watch his fights, but this fame did not bring him freedom. It only made him a more valuable slave. In the gladiator school, there were slaves from different nationalities: Gauls, Germans, Thracians, Syrians. All had become slaves for different reasons and shared the same fate. Spartacus made friends with them. These friendships were not just friendships. They were survival strategies. If there was no solidarity among gladiators, the arena would be much more deadly. They protected each other, healed the wounded, and shared knowledge. Spartacus's closest friends were Crixus and Oenomius. Crixus was a Gallic warrior, very strong and brave. Oenomius was of German origin, cool-headed and able to think strategically. The three together formed a perfect team. Among this trio, there was not only friendship, but also a common dream: freedom. At night in the dormitory, they would whisper and make escape plans, but the opportunity never seemed to arise. Spartacus lived as a gladiator for 2 years. During this time he fought 26 fights and won them all. He was now Capua's most famous gladiator. But as his fame increased, so did his dream of freedom. In the spring of 73 BC, an opportunity finally arose. Batiatus had tightened security at the school and began to grant gladiators less freedom. This situation angered the gladiators, and the idea of rebellion began to strengthen. Spartacus, Crixus, and Oenomaus secretly made plans. They wanted not only to escape, but to save as many gladiators as possible. The plan was simple. They would steal knives from the kitchen, subdue the guards, and escape collectively. When the appointed night came, 73 gladiators were ready. Spartacus led. Entering the kitchen, they took the knives, silenced the guards, and opened the doors. The first step was successful, but the real difficulty was beginning. Leaving Capua, escaping from Roman soldiers, finding a safe place. Much more preparation was needed for this. Spartacus said to the group, "Friends, we are now free, but we will need to fight to protect this freedom." These words went down in history because they marked the beginning of the slave rebellion. Their first target was Mount Vesuvius. That place was both easy to defend and a safe refuge for fugitives. However, to get there, they needed to avoid Roman patrol units. On the way, they encountered other slave groups. Slaves who heard the news also wanted to join the rebellion. Spartacus accepted everyone. Their numbers began to increase day by day. When they reached Vesuvius, they were now 300 people. Most were slaves, but there were also free peasants among them. Spartacus's charisma attracted not only slaves, but all oppressed classes. The Roman administration did not take the rebellion seriously at first. They saw it as a few fugitive slaves. They just sent Praetor Gaius Claudius Glaber with 3,000 soldiers. They thought they could easily suppress the rebellion with this force. But Spartacus was not an ordinary slave. He was an experienced warrior and knew strategy. He ambushed Glaber's army. Roman soldiers got lost in the mountains. Spartacus's men surrounded them from all sides. This first victory had a great impact. The number of those joining Spartacus's army increased rapidly. Now it wasn't just slaves, but poor farmers, criminals, and disgruntled soldiers were also coming. The secret of Spartacus's success was not only his military ability. He was also a very good leader. He managed to unite people from different backgrounds. He treated everyone equally and provided justice. There was strict discipline in his army. Looting and rape were forbidden. Thanks to this rule, the people did not fear Spartacus. They supported him. Public support was very important in the struggle against Rome. The second Roman army was larger. Praetor Publius Varinius came with 8,000 soldiers. This time, Rome had taken the rebellion seriously. But the result was the same. Spartacus won again. With this victory, Spartacus's fame spread throughout Italy. He was no longer seen as a rebellious slave, but as a freedom fighter. His name oscillated between hope and fear. His army had reached 20,000. This size was an advantage, but also a problem. Feeding, arming, and organizing so many people was very difficult. Spartacus had to be constantly on the move. During this period, the change in Spartacus's character was remarkable. He was no longer just an escaped slave, but had become a real commander. Decisive in his decisions, brave in battles, impartial in his justice. But he was also very tired. Constant war, constant decision-making, constant responsibility. The dream of freedom was coming true, but the price was very heavy. Different opinions began to emerge in his army. Crixus wanted to go south and save more slaves. Spartacus wanted to go north, cross the Alps, and enable everyone to return to their own country. This disagreement eventually caused the group to split. Crixus went south with 10,000 people. Spartacus stayed in the north with 20,000 people. This split was an opportunity for Rome. Crixus's group was defeated by Roman soldiers. Crixus was killed. This news saddened Spartacus very much. He had lost his closest friend. At the same time, he had also seen the correctness of his own strategy. To avenge Crixus's death, he made Roman prisoners fight as gladiators. This was both a symbolic act and psychological warfare. He was sending Rome the message, "You also have victims." Spartacus continued to advance north. He planned to cross the Alps and return to Thrace. But on the way, he changed his mind once again. Perhaps he did not want to abandon the struggle in Italy. He turned south. This decision is debatable. Perhaps he did this out of fatigue, or perhaps out of anger toward Rome. Crossing the Alps was difficult, and many slaves would die on this journey. Rome now took the rebellion very seriously. They sent Consul Marcus Licinius Crassus with a large army. Crassus was both rich and ruthless. He would try every method to suppress the rebellion. The war between Spartacus and Crassus lasted 2 years. This was not just a military struggle, but also a battle of wills. On one side were slaves fighting for freedom. On the other side was Rome wanting to preserve order. During this period, Spartacus was at his most mature, both warrior and diplomat, both leader and strategist. But his enemy was very powerful, and his resources were limited. Crassus cornered Spartacus in southern Italy. He hired ships from Cilician pirates at sea, but the pirates did not keep their word. Land routes were also cut off by Crassus. The final battle took place in 71 BC in southern Italy. Spartacus now knew he had nowhere to escape. Either freedom or death. There was no other choice. Before the battle, he made his final speech to his soldiers. "Friends, the journey we began ends here. But remember, we were not born just to be slaves. We deserve to be free, and we fought for this." In the final battle, Spartacus showed legendary courage. He attacked toward the heart of the Roman army, tried to kill Crassus. But the numerical superiority was too great. He died on the battlefield. His body was never found, because there were so many wounded that it was impossible to tell who he was. Perhaps this was better. The legend remained stronger this way. The rebellion was suppressed, but its effect continued. 6,000 prisoners were crucified along the Appian Way. Rome thus sent the message, "This is the price of slave rebellion." But Spartacus's struggle was not in vain. He proved that slaves were also human, that they deserved freedom. After his rebellion, the slavery system in Rome began to be questioned. Spartacus was not just a slave rebellion leader. He was also a revolutionary fighting against social injustice. His struggle symbolized the struggle of all the oppressed. His greatest achievement was accomplishing something that seemed impossible. For 3 years he had fought against Rome's most powerful armies and defeated them. This showed that slaves could also fight. Spartacus's story is not just the story of ancient times, but of all times, fighting for freedom, standing against tyrants, fighting for justice. These values never become outdated. His spirit lives in gladiator arenas, on old Roman roads, in every person fighting for freedom. Spartacus did not die. He became a legend. The Roman Empire fell, but Spartacus's name was not forgotten, because in the struggle between power and force, he stood by the powerless. This stance made him immortal. I was born free. I want to live free. I will die free. This was Spartacus's life philosophy, and this philosophy inspires people even thousands of years after his death. Spartacus, timeless, brave, invincible. Chains bound his body, but could never enslave his soul.